what we want to do is just briefly go through the issues of project management. I apologize for yesterday. We just want to go through the issues of project management and in a whistle-top tour. So hopefully no surprises today. The topics we want to really look at are, I just want to look at project management fundamentals, time management, cost management, risk management, and then talk about some of the contractual issues, and then just some tips with project management. So quite a lot of material in 30 minutes, but hopefully you won't have any problem. Please text me if you have any questions. Please text me if you have any questions, or indeed you lose my voice audio. Just text and say what the hell's going on. Text and say what is going on. But thanks very much for joining me, Furman. Whereabouts are you located, Furman, as a matter of interest? Borneo, Egypt? Oh, you can't see the visualization. So you can't see the slides at all. That's a bit of a bugger. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Furman. Do you have an email address? What I'm going to do is I'm going to email you the PowerPoints. Do you mind just going through them as I read through this? You've got you don't have PowerPoint, do you? Oh, okay. Just let me see. Can you, Furman, can you see, can you read PowerPoint if I send you a PowerPoint file, or is that not readable on the Mac? Can you read a PowerPoint file or not? So if I send you a PowerPoint now, can you give me your email address? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the slides as we go through them, and I'll tell you which ones you're on. Can you give me, okay, great. Okay, I'm going to send this through to you now. It's a few slides, but I'll get that through to you now. I just hope that you can read PowerPoint on your Mac. PowerPoint slides. Please find attached PowerPoint slides. Okay, I'm sending these through to you now. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab these. The show must always go on. Sorry, I'm just going to get the slides. Marketing. Okay, I've sent them off. It's called Essentials of Project Management. Hopefully you can see those. They sort of a reasonable size file. I've sent them there. Can you just see if you've got the file received? Okay, I've sent you the PowerPoint slides. You should have them by now. Just confirm you can see it. Confirm that you can see the PowerPoints. The only other thing I can do is perhaps export them to a PDF, but preferably not. Can you see those slides yet, Thurman? So there's... should have by now. It's gone off. Ah, good. Okay. See if you can read those files. It's in PowerPoint. Can you see them? I'm just a bit worried about Macintosh. That's what worries me a little bit. The good old PC slides and. Good. Okay, great. Can you see the PowerPoints on the screen or not? Can you see the PowerPoints sorry, I'm being misleading here. Can you see project management fundamentals on my Lectromeet screen on your browser? Can you see project management? Okay, I've just changed the slide, that's why. Can you see it now? Can you see now? Okay, great. Okay, good. So project management fundamentals is where I am now. And can you see a big purple thing around there? Okay, so really just want to look at project management fundamentals and just definitions, processes, the project framework. Okay. So first of all, definitions. Good. Okay, brilliant. Okay, thanks. That's fantastic. That's good news. Thank you very much. That's good to hear that you can see everything, and apologize for the hassles here. First of all, a project is a temporary endeavor to create a new product or service. So if you're building a factory or a plant or an iPhone, as I said yesterday, you've got a project. And if you have a program, if you use the word program, it means a group of connected projects. So the whole idea with project management is that you take skills, tools, such as software for planning, processes and knowledge, and you create some sort of functionality. Okay, so obviously planned, executed, and controlled. You have resource limitations and performed by people. So my question to you, Furman, is have you undertaken any projects? Have you undertaken any projects? Have you undertaken any projects? Yes, okay. What sort of project? Just while I carry on talking, you can tell me about the projects that you've done, because that makes it a bit more interesting. So, main industrial plant. Okay, good. Okay, so what you do is you initiate, you plan, you execute, you control, which is specifically if you're working with software, control is absolutely critical, and then of course you have handover and project closure, very important. So we use a systems approach because we want to try and make it as organized, systematic as possible, and you have things, as I mentioned yesterday, called inputs, outputs, and functions. So I'm just going to look at some of these inputs. So before I look at the inputs, remember that the PMBOK, this is a very important standard or a group body of knowledge, PMBOK, and it has a whole series of individual components to it. So the ones which we probably come across most often are time, cost, quality management, and risk management. Very important, but there are other ones which I've highlighted now: integration, scope management, HR management, management of people, communication management, communicating clearly, and of course procurement management. So these are all other additional issues as well. Very important standard. So we talk about processes in terms of inputs. So an input is an input into the project, such as a document, plan, or design. Tools and techniques are things which you use to actually undertake the project, and the output, of course, is products, services, and documents. The slides got stuck on the cover page. Okay, can you see the slide? Furman, can you see the slide? Can you see the slide on the browser? Or is the slides that I sent you, are those stuck on the cover page? Oh, okay, I'm really sorry. So you're going to see lines. Okay. Stuck on the cover page. Ah, really? Okay. Well, look, just carry on. I'll just tell you the heading. So the project life cycle, have you got that on the slides? Project life cycle. Project life cycle. Can you see that? Just say yes or no or go away, Steve. Project life cycle is at the top. Just confirm that you can see that on the PowerPoints. Oh, good. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Gee. Okay, so the project life cycle, you have pre-feasibility, feasibility, planning, implementation, handover, and closeout. And you can see each one has a section there. So you have each has a section, and you can see the one flows into the next phase. Obviously, you can't go from handover and have that first. So obviously, it's section by section. So probably the most important part of one of the most important issues with project management is time management. That's the next slide, time management. And that can be a real killer. For example, working with software, a software project, the time management is extremely critical because you can overshoot so easily. So time management is monitoring and reporting, comparing actual and achieved progress. That's one of the biggest issues, and very important. Project planning, there's two types of methods for the planning. One is critical path method or the precedence method. So for project planning, that's the top of the slide. There are 4 steps common to both approaches. One is called work breakdown, define the logic network, apply the activity data, and analyze the network. So those are the 4 steps. So as far as the network analysis is concerned, that's the next slide. Network analysis at the top. You have things called float. So float is where there's a bit of a gap between each one of the activities. So if you have a gap between activities, that's called float. So there's different types of float as we discussed there. So I'm not going to worry about presenting a schedule. Next issue is cost management, which is obviously really important. That's the top of the slide. Cost management 3.0. And there you get estimating, budgeting, financial control, change control. Change control, you may have come across, really important, for example, variations in the contract. as you have the contract, nothing's perfect. There's always variations. The owner of the job or the project wants to make changes to it, so that's variations. And often you'll find the contractor comes in at under the price and makes his money up with variations, so you've got to watch out for that. Cost estimating, obviously you have feasibility studies and cost management, and there's various estimate bases that you can use. And there's various estimating methods. I'm not going to worry about those. Obviously, the important thing with cost estimating is document procedures. So you've got to be extremely well documented. The final critical one is risk defined, and I'm sure you're familiar with risk, Thurman. Risk is the multiplying of likelihood of the event by the consequences. So risk defined, you'll see, for example, a frequent irritation. For example, if you're running a project and you know there's a bit of a risk because the guys are slipping. It's running over a year and there's a few hours lost here and there. Well, that's a fairly low risk problem. A major risk with a massive consequence is, say you're building a boiler plant. Oh, you don't have 4.0 risk defined? Risk defined, just go on to 4.0, risk defined at the top of the slide. If you've got the PowerPoints, you should have 4.0. Risk defined is at the top, 4.0. So if you have, for example, you're building a boiler plant and the boiler plant explodes, obviously you've got to watch out for the risk there. It's low, but it could be a catastrophe. You could have the likelihood being high and a high consequence, which is a common disaster, obviously, to be avoided. So there's different types of risks application, which I'm not going to worry about. Risk identification is very important. You should see a slide with the heading risk identification. You need to identify all the risks of the project. So step one is identify all events that could affect. So you look at all the elements, all the events, and step two is consider causes and scenarios for each event. So the way to get this information is by interviewing people that are familiar with the risks, brainstorming, use of specialists, experts, and obviously looking back at history. So that's very important risk analysis, to do it as objectively as possible. Then you integrate time and cost. I'm not going to worry about that. Now we look at legal issues in procurement. This is point number 6. Point number 6, legal issues in procurement. So I just want to briefly spend some moments talking about legal issues in procurement. Obviously, if you're in the UK, you'll be looking at the UK's legal system. If you're in Australia, you'll be looking at the Australian legal system. If you're in the Middle East, you may be looking at no legal system, and then you've got to be extremely careful, as I've done projects there before, can be high risk. So really the legal system is the basis. You've got different types of law, constitutional, local government, civil law, and then the doctrine of precedence is very important. In other words, if a court decides on some issue with a project, they will use that decision in new court cases. And then the final thing is natural justice is really important. In some countries, you don't get justice, and that is that the tribunal or the guys sitting on the court case may be biased because they've been paid off, perhaps, hopefully not. So the elements of a contract are really important. The first thing is you've got to have an intention to be legally bound. Then you've got to have an offer and acceptance and consideration. That's generally, and you've got to have definite terms. You can't have sort of general airy-fairy conditions. And then you've got to have, both parties must be able to contract. Bear in mind that a contract can lapse with time, and it can be revocable. And you can, if you make an offer and the guy you're making the offer to on the contract makes a counter offer, your offer will be destroyed at that point. So if you say, I'll give you $100, the guy says, no, I want $150, I'll take $150, that's a counter offer. Other issues are acceptance. It's got to be absolute, and you've got to make sure there's not a counter offer, it's actually an acceptance. It must be communicated, and it doesn't have to only be in writing, it could also be in words. And accept it, so you have a date. Consideration is for the money or payment or some exchange for the actual contract. Terms, you've got to actually expressly define the terms, and there's a very important principle called contra proferentum, which means the person that drafted the contract is, if there's an argument about the contract and there's an issue about the interpretation of any clause in the contract, the contra proferentum rule says that the person who drafted the contract, it will be decided against him for a particular clause. If there's any ambiguity or misunderstanding about a particular clause, the guy that drafted the contract should have known better, so the decision will be go against him if there's any issue about a particular clause. So it's quite an important rule. So in other words, if you're an insurance company and you draft a contract, the guy who signs the contract from the insurance company, he will actually have a preferable agreement on their terms. So just a few final tips. Point 7, some additional tips here. Lay the groundwork, define the success criteria, look at project drivers and constraints, things which could go wrong. Always look for areas that go wrong, because you can bet your bottom dollar, if there's any doubt about it going wrong, it will go wrong. I can guarantee you now. Define when the contract is complete. Now that's a very interesting question. You will find always, especially in the Middle East, for example, if you engage in a contract, a client will say, no, you haven't finished yet. You still need to do a bit more work. So it's very, very important to define in the contract documents before you start the contract exactly what it means to have completed the contract. And then with negotiation, if you disagree with anything and you're negotiating, don't just take it lying down, negotiate. Or try and create a win-win solution. Some other additional tips: plan the work very carefully, write a plan, be extremely detailed about your planning, extremely detailed. And then when you find defects, look at reworking. And very importantly, manage the project risks proactively. Estimate the project very carefully. Always look at real effort. Forget about calendar time. People cannot be expected to work 100% of the time. Always expect them to work 80% or perhaps even lower. So if you put a laborer in or a tradesman for 40 hours a week, you can assume he's only going to work 32 hours a week, best time. Also build in training time to learn a new bit of equipment, and record everything. So if you've done an estimate, make sure you've got it recorded in a generally accessible spot so you know exactly how you worked out that estimate. Track your progress. Keep tracking all the time. Don't try and hide bad news. So that's it. So that's a little presentation from me, Steve Mackay. Hopefully you can see question and answers there, Thurman. I'm sorry you couldn't see everything on Firefox, but do you have any questions? I guess my question to you, Thurman, is this. Do you see the Q&A slide on the browser? I'll just switch the recording off.